Okay. Uh, Hello, everyone. This is the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna. I here with my co-host. Before I introduce her, we would like to let everyone that this is a special edition of the Sunday show of Progressive Minds. We're here this afternoon, and we're gonna be talking to our special guest in regards to an event that is coming up at the Dusabo Museum this coming Tuesday, and is title is Observations from Israel. Some of our guests are here. Hopefully, we'll get the others. But now we have Chanel, who is my co-host, who will be helping with the conversation. Chanel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and to the event at the Dusabo Museum on Tuesday.
Awesome. And so our guest this evening, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching on Facebook, you can share it with your friends. If you come on, just do so, and then you can also like the page. We are currently on YouTube and Twitter as well. Our guest this evening is Christina King, who is she's first time on the show, perhaps, right?
Yes.
Okay, right. That's
My
what I
first
thought.
time.
Yes, Christina King is the president of Shiloh Institute. She's also works with the Black and Jewish communities, and she's been doing this for 15 years. Christina, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I watch all the time, so I'm
Awesome.
happy to be here.
Next to Christina, we have Brian, who's also a first timer, Brian Abrahams. Correct me if I'm wrong. Brian is a CEO of the American Friends of Sheba Medical Center and a leader in the Chicago Jewish community. Brian, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I apologize that I'm in transit, but I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. You can take it from here, Chanel. I am expecting to learn a lot from this. This is the first of its kind, so I'm expecting to learn a lot, Chanel. Yeah, so I know we have this show had to be put together quickly because of the event coming up on Tuesday. What are your expectations, Chanel, before we go to our guest?
I don't have a lot of interactions with people in the Jewish community. I think being somebody born and raised I lived in New York for some time, and so I lived very close to a very Hasidic Jewish community during my time in New York City, which was my first, and I don't even want to say interaction, but maybe I'll just say exposure, because it was a very insular group, exposure to that particular Jewish community, but then there's just a large Jewish population in New York City. But I'm really just excited to hear about the trip and just about, the relationship building that I'm sure is happening between, Black people throughout the diaspora and the Jewish community. I am familiar with Hebrew Israelites because I see that over here on the South Side. But there's still so much to learn about, the Jewish community, which I know is varied and very vast.
Awesome. Brian, since this is the first time, and so we appreciate your time. I know you are in transit, so we will try and get a few more information from you, and then we'll go to Christina. If someone, we know you are the CEO of the Friends of Sheba Medical Center. Is that exactly what it is? Is it like a medical center? Is it a community of people? Can you give us a little bit of breakdown of your organization and what it serves?
Sure. So Sheba Medical Center is the largest medical center in the Middle East. It's among the largest in the world, and it's one of the top-ranked hospitals in the world. It's an enormous campus. It's half the size of the country of Monaco. It was founded in 1948 by David Ben-Gurion as Israel's national hospital, and today serves not only almost 20% of the Israeli population, but serves people from the West Bank and Gaza Strip, from across the Middle East, and even around the world. Sheba does a lot of humanitarian missions. For instance, January alone, we did 4 missions to Africa, 1 to Mombasa, Kenya with the U.S. Navy, 2 to Ethiopia, and 1 to Nigeria. So it's not only an international medical center, leader in research and medical innovation, but we also do a tremendous amount of humanitarian work. The Israeli government views Sheba as an arm to the world, a medical arm to the world.
Thanks for that background. And now that we know a little bit more, I'm also interested in you talked about the African countries that you've been to. I'm from Ghana, so I want to be biased. I don't know if you're planning on going there or if you've already been there.
I don't believe we've been to Ghana. I'd have to look that one up. We do. It's a mixture of where there's need. For instance, we did a mission to Haiti. In December, there was this enormous gas explosion in a secondary city in Haiti, and a lot of people with burns. And Sheba has advanced capabilities with laser burn treatment. So we sent a mission to Haiti in January. And so it's a mixture of need and where we're invited to go to. I'd have to. Sorry, I don't know Ghana off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up.
It's right by Nigeria, not far away.
Well, we did do. I mean, in Nigeria, just as an example, there's a kind of pediatric ocular cancer of the eye, that is fatal if untreated, but very treatable, except that it requires a specialized method of delivering the chemotherapy drugs through an artery directly into the eye. So we sent a team to Nigeria in about a month or two ago to train the Nigerian doctors so they could train the rest of the country. So part of what we want to do is not just, under the rubric of kind of teaching people to fish, we want to train people. It's not just direct treatment, but how do you help other countries improve their medical capabilities?
That's very good to know. And so it's only fair that after Nigeria, Ghana will be the next. And so we'll talk about we'll talk about the possibility of that happening, because the services and the help that you're giving our society through your organization is super, super needed. And I'll say in Ghana as well. And so I think that, the country can benefit off of your services. So Kristina, hopefully you can make that connection with Brian and see when we can get a next trip of Sheba to Ghana.
Sure. It's really, partly it's a function of where we're invited. We put the only field hospital inside of Ukraine during the war. Okay. No other country put a field hospital on the ground inside Ukraine. And my medical center ran it. And today, one of the things we found, we closed up the field hospital, but one of the things we found is there's a tremendous amount of assault of women and girls and boys by Russian soldiers, sexual assault. So we equipped, my organization bought this trailer that has 2 exam rooms and an intake room. We equipped a women's mobile health clinic that we shipped over to Germany, drove into Ukraine, and today is traveling around Ukraine, mobile women's health center. So partly it's where we get to come. If we're asked to come to Ghana, it definitely raises the likelihood.
Okay, great. We will work on that invitation. Thank you so much for giving us the background. I wanted to go to Kristina, but Chanel, I don't know if you had a follow-up question.
No, I don't. I'm just, it's amazing.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you for that.
So you are also a leader when it comes to the Jewish community in Chicago. What exactly does that look like?
Well, Jews are like any group, pretty diverse group from right to left. From one of the things that it might be interesting to talk about is that most people assume Jews look like me. I'm what's called an Ashkenazi Jew of Eastern European descent. But in fact, in Israel, over half the population of Jews are Jews of color. So there's a wide range of colors in the Jewish community as well. So the Jewish community of Chicago is fairly diverse, but they're also live mostly in the northern suburbs and in the downtown area. And it's among the national communities in the country, it's known as being a very philanthropic community, the country that does a lot of charitable giving.
Okay. No, thank you so much for giving us that insight. We'll come back to you briefly. Kristina King, you've been traveling to Israel for a long time. You have been working and being involved within the Black and Jewish community for over 15 years. How long have you traveled to Israel?
Actually, I believe the first time I traveled to Israel was in 2007. And I'm happy to have Brian on this call because it was with our work together when we both worked at APEC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, was my first trips to Israel. I learned so much about Israel from Brian. Brian's work all over the nation and all over the world in regard to the Jewish community. So I have made about 34 trips to Israel. The focus of my work has been with the Black and Jewish community. So really introducing and developing relationship between the African American and the Jewish community, and introducing the African American community both to the Jewish community as well as the land of Israel on leadership trips. So with community leaders, political leaders, religious leaders, and just an advocate of the alliance between the Black and Jewish community. So in my years of doing this work, and when I first became acquainted with the Jewish community and began to do research and study on the relationship between the Black and Jewish community, one thing that I think is lost in the discussion and some of the discussions that are happening currently is that the Jewish community has been a tremendous ally of the African American community for many, many years. And so I'm a great supporter of the friendship and of the allyship between these two communities.
Thank you so much. And Chanel, before you coming, I wanted to get an in-depth of who Christina King is. So I know, of course, you live in Chicago, but you're also the president. So pardon me, I didn't get that proper intro. You're the president of SHALOM Institute. Tell us a little bit about SHALOM Institute and what it does.
So after focusing for many years on Israel, I guess my introduction to Israel was very much from a place of faith. And then I began being involved in community and political things as well. But my introduction, again, from a faith perspective, in the last couple of years, that I was led to also begin to understand the relationship between Israel, Africa, and Black America. And so in the last 2 or 3 years, I began to really start to learn and to study about Africa as well. And so thankful that brought me into relationship with you, Sana, and to be guided so deeply about Ghana and the connection between the African and African American. And so the SHILOH Institute, which will be launching in September, is the culmination of those many years of work, Israel, Africa, and Black America. And the focus is the development of ethical global leaders to help impact the world for good. So as the Jewish community would say, for tikkun olam. So, but we know that we see the need for ethical leaders. In my own estimation, I believe that the Black and the Jewish communities have been the moral conscience of America and the world. And so there's so many things in the Judeo-Christian wisdom and ethics that are a great foundation for the development of ethical world leaders.
Thank you so much.
And can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
I apologize, but I just want to add, Christina is such a unique bridge builder. We live in an era in which the people who are celebrated and get the most attention are the dividers, and the people who can find out what's different about us and why we should be angry with one another. And Christina has really been a unique bridge builder. It doesn't mean we agree on every single thing, but she looks for the points of commonality and the ways and reasons to cooperate. And it really is a model for so many of us, the way Christina operates.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chanel.
Yeah, Christina, I was just wondering, what was the impetus for you to really be involved and get involved in and be interested in the Jewish community? And I'm just wondering what that was for you.
As a Christian, I never even realized that there was any kind of connection between Judaism, Jews, and Christians. So I never even put any connection to the word Judeo-Christian. I didn't even realize that it had anything to do with the Jewish community. So I'm just saying that as a Christian, that's how far off. And I'd never heard any teaching. And so when I lived in Detroit, there was a pastor, Pastor Glenn Plummer, who is now a bishop in the Church of God in Christ. He actually now he's the bishop over the jurisdiction of Israel and lives in Jerusalem. But many years ago, he had reached out to me because of my work in promotions and marketing and development. And he had given a speech. He was the chairman of the National Religious Broadcasters at the time, and he gave a speech during his outgoing session about why Israel should engage the African American community. And when he gave me a CD of that message and asked me if I would put, the legs and pieces together to the development of an organization. And so I began to study the relationship between the Black and Jewish community. I began to study about the civil rights movement and the role that the Jewish community had played in the civil rights movement. 70% of the funding, 50% of the attorneys, many of the organization, and so much of the alliance between the Black and Jewish community. And it just birthed an incredible gratitude in my heart towards the Jewish community and towards Israel. I began to realize that Israel was like a real place. It wasn't just like Narnia, a place of the Bible, but it was a real land. And so as I continued to study, I realized that, wow, as a Christian, like this Bible was really a story of the Jewish people, and that the prophets were Jews, that the land of Israel was the Jewish people, and that even as a Christian, the Messiah was a Jew. So for me, it was a very spiritual thing, and it was a passion, and it was a gratitude that was just birthed in my heart during that study. And it has been a passion that has sustained me for all these years to continue to look at the alliance and to look at the relationship between Blacks and Jews.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of insight. As a lot of these things I never knew. So thank you so much, Kristina, for sharing. It's 4:18 Central Time. We are on the Progressive Mind Show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you just join us, remember to like the pages, share it so that we can all learn and also get to know about the event coming up at the Dusabo Museum this Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., which is titled Observations from Israel. We would like to also let our audience know we would like to apologize. We had some very important people, in addition to our great guest here, that were supposed to be on the show, but due to conflicting schedules, they were not able to make it. So Rabbi FUNNYE couldn't make the show today, and Counselor, I want to make sure I'm getting the name right.
Yeah,
Yinam Cohen also couldn't make it.
Cohen.
Right, and then President Perry of the Dusabo Museum also couldn't make it. So hopefully we can get them later in the show. If not, be sure to see them Tuesday at the Dusabo Museum at 5:30. We'll talk. We would like to dive into that conversation for now. I don't know if Chanel has any more questions.
You all have to excuse. Uh-oh. I think we had something technical just happened.
Yeah, we had a glitch over there. But go ahead.
Yeah. You guys have to excuse me because I had prepared for Rabbi FUNNYE, Armor, Miss Perry,
President Perry.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Along with Mr. Cohen.
Right.
Pardon me.
Okay, no worries. Brian, so you were a leader of the Jewish community in Chicago. Now, I'm just curious to know what a jurisdiction is. Would it be the Chicago land, or does it stretch out to the burbs? Can you give us the landscape in which you are a leader, and what's the title? Is there a title to it, or just we just call it a leader?
It's KRISTINA being very kind and calling me a leader. I mean, I would say there's no single person. In fact, the Jewish community was very famously, Franklin Roosevelt during World War II was so exasperated, and he said, "Why can't the Jews just get a pope or a king? Why do I have to deal with all these different leaders?" So KRISTINA's been very kind to me, but no one's elected me, no one's chosen me. I was born and raised in Chicago. Loosely, the Jewish community would be, you know, probably go all the way from the Wisconsin state line down to the Indiana state line and quite a bit west. But I'm one of many. It was KRISTINA's kindness, not anyone's selection.
I do have a question for Mr. Abrams.
Go ahead.
Am I pronouncing your name right?
It's Abraham's, but no one in the history of my life, I think 2 people have ever pronounced it correctly. So it's all fine. It's all.
And good. I see the S there, so I'm going to pronounce it the way I should, Mr. Abrahams. Thank you for that.
Perfect. That was exactly right. In my life, about 2 people have pronounced it correctly. So a long time ago, I stopped being bothered by it.
Now, I'm just curious, the S at the end of it, how did that come to be, or do you even know?
It's a good question. A lot of Jews, when they came in, the legend is, and there's some truth to it, when they came to the country through Ellis Island as immigrants, they often did not speak much English. They had heavy accents. And so the names got garbled or changed or made up on entry into the country. So the Abraham obviously is tied to the biblical Abraham, but the S at the end is a very rare spelling. So I don't think there was anything intentional in the family. I think it just was. There's famous stories about people whose names, because of their lack of pronunciation, their names were garbled when they arrived.
Now you said that when your family came here to Ellis Island, am I guessing that your family came here to escape the Holocaust?
Before the Holocaust, there was actually the Holocaust was kind of an end or a milestone in European anti-Semitism, but actually there really was never very few times when it didn't exist, and particularly in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there began to be what were called pogroms, Pogroms, which were kind of quasi-state-sponsored, quasi-organized attacks on the Jewish community. And so there was a tremendous exodus of Jews. My family exited Europe before the Holocaust because conditions were so bad. There's a famous story about my great-grandfather being chased and shot at. And so they just kind of left as quickly as they can.
Okay. I have a follow-up. I have a question for you, Brian.
Sure.
And I've always been curious about this. Can you tell us the relationship, or what you know about the relationship when it comes to Black community and the Jewish community?
It's a great question. The entire books have been written on it. I think that the Jewish community feels affinity for the Black and African American community. They feel that there's a mixture, as KRISTINA said, and it sounds, I'm speaking about it very matter of fact, and KRISTINA brought it up, but the history of the civil rights movement, had a very high proportion of Jews involved. Now, the reasons are complex. To a certain extent, it's absolutely true that Jews had a stake in the civil rights movement. In fact, under Jim Crow, the term colored referred also to Jews, not just to Blacks. And often there were covenants when you had restrictive covenants written into deeds for homes, you couldn't sell to Blacks or Jews. But there also was, KRISTINA used the term earlier, tikkun olam. It's a Hebrew term that means to heal the world. And part of the imperative, part of the command of the Jewish religion is to fix the world. Judaism is not very focused. There's very little in Judaism about heaven and the afterlife. We're mainly supposed to focus on this world. So the Jewish community sees engagement with the African American community as an imperative, both in their own interest to have a fair, more just society. Remember, the people in Charlottesville were marching, and one of the chants was, "Jews will not replace us." So we have many of the same enemies, but that's not sufficient. We also have a lot of reasons to be friends. So there's a lot of, no one elected me to speak for them, but I think it's fair to say a clear majority of the Jewish community feels an affinity and feels identified with the civil rights struggle and feels a need to help make America a more fair and just place.
How about Go ahead, Chanel.
Well, no, go ahead. If you have a follow-up question, you should ask.
Yes, and my question is, and great insights to that question. Really appreciated, Brian. How about Africa? Israel and Africa, or Jewish community, and then Africa. Is there an Asian or historic relationship, or is there a potential one? If there isn't, is there a potential one that is currently ongoing in terms of high level conversations when it comes to our relationship?
It's a good question. I think there's less clarity, but I do think, look, if you look at a map, Israel is the land bridge between Asia, Africa, and up into Europe. So Israel feels very much the African connection and the proximity. The relationship between Africa and Israel was a complicated one because not all the countries were historically friendly to Israel. But over the years, there has been a lot of bridge building and a lot of relationships built between the countries. American Jews, I would say, have engaged with Africa, but not necessarily in the same disproportionate way they're engaged with African Americans.
Do you know if there are conversations or intentions to perhaps strengthen that relationship? I mean, because if you look, like you said, Americans per Kamala Harris, the vice president's recent visit to Ghana, these are all attempts of the American government trying to foster, entrench its position or its relationship with Africa. We know Russians are trying to do so. The Chinese are trying to do so as well. Is there anything like that for Israel, if you are aware of?
There's not. Well, Israel has an organization called IsraAid, which primarily focuses on Africa. There may be some other countries in there, but focuses heavily on Africa and also some Middle Eastern countries. I think you'll find the Jewish community is heavily involved in certain organizations. There's one called American Jewish World Service, which reaches out to the larger world and does focus on some of the African countries. So there is some focus.
Okay, right. Thank you for again that giving us that insight.
You know, Israel was also an observer. It was also an observer state of the African Union. So I know that it's also been a focus in with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and for many prime ministers who have been building relationship with Africa. So there's an organization called Mashav, which is like the USAID, and they have done since Golda Meir have worked to do things with agriculture, technology, and other kind of projects together with Africa. So there's been, as Brian said, although it's been complex, it's been a relationship that has been, it's been important and continue to try to develop.
Awesome.
So you should take some leadership on that, Stena, and help Ghana connect with Israel. We'll have to connect you with Brian so we can connect us to the right people.
Definitely. There also was an ancient Jewish community in Ethiopia, which was a 2,000-year-old community. And in fact, they were not even widely known in the world. And in the 60s and 70s, Israel became aware that there was a Jewish community in Ethiopia. And so there was and they were somewhat discriminated against. So there was a long effort that went from the 70s until today to get the Ethiopian Jews out. And I was actually privileged to be part of there was an airlift in 1991 of a large portion of the community from Ethiopia and Israel. So there are actually Black Jews as well. And they've been the only group of Black Africans taken out of Africa, not to be slaves, but to be freed, were the Ethiopian Jews taken out by Israel.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you brought that up, because I'm aware of the story of these Ethiopian Jews who had been pleading their case to Israel for a long time, that they were actually Jewish people. And for a long time, they were rebuffed. And then I know that they were welcomed after some time. I'm also familiar with a group of Igbos in Nigeria who have also claimed that who also say that they are Jewish, but they have not been embraced by the Israeli government. And I'm just wondering who decides the lineage of, you know, people, who gets to make that decision about who is going to be considered Jewish, who is not, who is welcomed in Israel, and who is not. And I'm wondering why.
Oops.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
So it's sorry, Chanel, your audio cut out there at the end, but it's a very complicated question. It's a very difficult one. Israel has, you know, is a civilian government, but it also has a very powerful rabbinate, religious authority, and partly they're looking at what is the history of religious practice. There has been a lot of interest in non-Jewish Africans in coming to Israel for economic reasons. There have been a lot of economic migrants that have traveled long distance across Africa to come to Israel and work. So the issue of Jewish identity and is complex. Israel has a law that says if you have just one Jewish grandparent, you're entitled to automatic citizenship, and of course anyone else can come and apply for citizenship. So you hit on an important question, Chanel. It's a complicated one. There's another tribe. There's an additional tribe in Africa that is also stated that it is Jewish, and these become very complicated conversations with the rabbinate and the government, etc.
Okay, thank you so much for that insight. This is the Progressive Mind Show. It's 4:31. We are talking to Brian Abrahams, who is the CEO of American Friends of Sheba Medical Center and also a leader in the Jewish community here in Chicago. KRISTINA King is the president of SHILOH Institute, and we will take this conversation is in regards to observations from Israel, which is an important forum coming up this coming Tuesday at the DuSable Museum right here in Chicago at 5:30. So make a date, be there to learn more about Israel, what's going on there, the observations of Rabbi FUNNYE, the president of DuSable Museum, Perry Emmer, who couldn't make the show, and also the consulate, the honorary consulate of Israel in Chicago will be there as well, Mr. Yenam Cohen. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we will continue the conversation with Brian, KRISTINA King, and of course, my co-host, Chanel Oliver. Please stay with us. This is the Progressive Mind Show. And while we're on break, remember to share the feed, like the page, and click on the notifications. So when we come here every Sunday at 4 p.m., you can be part of the community building show. And also remember that we are here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. as well. We shall be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the show. My name is Senna. This is the Progressive Minds. We were back to the conversations. Before we continue, as you had seen during our commercial break, we are also in the business of making graphics and websites. And so if anyone out there is in need of website building, graphics, logos, you may want to contact send us a message at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. info.progressiveminds@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us via any of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on IG. We also have the audio version of the show on Spotify. So just in case you're driving somewhere or you want to listen to the Progressive Minds past shows, go to Spotify, search for the Progressive Mind Show. You should be able to listen to us 24/7. Pardon us for the slight glitch in our transmission today. We encourage that you donate to the Progressive Mind Show. We are a 501c media platform, and we encourage you all to donate so we can keep our equipment up, upgrade our systems in order to continue bringing you these educative and community building conversations. Let's get back to our guests this evening who are helping to get ourselves ready for Tuesday event at the Dusabo Museum. We've had an interesting conversation so far. I have learned personally when it comes to Israel and their relationship with the rest of the world, the impact that they're making through Sheba, which is a huge global medical center that is impacting the world. And we are looking to talk to the government of Ghana to invite officially Brian Abraham's organization to get some medical assistance to Ghanaians, to some parts of Ghana who need this, who really need this. So again, thank you all so much for an interesting conversation so far. Brian, I'm also interested in the current issue going on in Israel. Do you think Netanyahu is going to stay in office? One. And then secondly, can you tell us, we've seen the protest in Israel on TV, but can you give us more insight to what it is about?
Great question. So it's a very complicated issue. The first thing to know is Israel, unlike America, it's more similar to the European countries. It's a parliamentary system. So you don't actually vote for a candidate for president. You don't even actually vote for a representative. You vote for a party. And so there's 120 members in the Knesset, in the parliament, and you need 61 people to say, I want that person to be prime minister. And so you have to make coalitions. In the history of the country, they've never had any party have 61. So you have to bring in other parties. Netanyahu is in legal trouble in a variety of different ways. And he was out of office for a short time, but then Israel's had a bunch of elections. The electorate's very volatile right now. And so he holds a majority, but a thin majority. And he's trying to put some changes in the system. Some people believe it's to protect his own legal status and prevent himself from going to jail. But Israel has no constitution. There's a kind of a Declaration of Independence. And so they have a Supreme Court in Israel, which kind of acts as the Constitution. It kind of provides the guardrails. And so Netanyahu is proposing changes to the Supreme Court that has many people very upset. I will say I observed one of the protests. I was there in February. I'm headed back next week. And it's, on one hand, there's a remarkable patriotism. There's more flags on display at the protest than you'll see in Independence Day in most countries, including Israel. So there's a love of country, but there's a tremendous proportion of the country that is extremely upset about this. And I was told that when the tipping point is when over 3% of a country is on the streets protesting, that produces societal change. And Israel's right at about 3.5% every single Saturday night that turn out for these massive protests. I saw the one in Tel Aviv. It was approximately 150,000 people protesting. Mm-hmm. So it's really, as someone who's been going to Israel and observing it, and for over 40 years, there always seems to be something going on in Israel. There's some crisis. There's something. It always feels like Israel's on the brink. On the other hand, there's people that I respect and think are very smart who say this time is different. And this truly is.
Okay, so unfortunately, we lost the feed to Mr. Brian Abrahams. We lost the connection to his feed, so we'll see if we can get him back. But he was making a great point there. Let's see if we can get the other guests back in the studio. Okay, great. While we wait for that to get him back into the feed, KRISTINA, let's talk about the event coming up on Tuesday. Why is it necessary to have this forum, which you are titling "Observations from Israel"?
Well, actually, Rabbi FUNNYE, who is a leader in the Jewish community and the Black community, He's been a rabbi. He's a rabbi here at a congregation in Chicago called BETH Shalom. And recently traveled to Israel. He's been someone who's traveled back and forth to Israel several times, and also president of the DeSabo Museum, Perry Ermer, recently traveled. And so it's always good to hear from leaders who our communities trust. So many things are happening in Israel right now. The protests, as Brian was talking about, the unsteadiness about Netanyahu and whether he'll remain prime minister. There was just a operation, what they call them, or there was just skirmishes, right, with Israel and the Palestinians that just recently happened, and the ceasefire that just happened about a week ago. There's also Israel's Independence Day, its 75th anniversary. So many things are happening in Israel right now, that it was an opportunity to be able to hear from some trusted leaders from our community who have just traveled to Israel and to get their observations. Then we were fortunate to also have a wonderful relationship with the Council General of Israel to the Midwest, Yanam Cohen. One of his main focuses is on helping to share about the diversity of Israel, the many diverse communities. So after many years for myself of being someone who's helped to develop outreach to the African American community for predominantly Jewish organizations, as I began to work with the Africa and the African community, my interest and one of my big focuses now is the communities of color in Israel. And so I wish so much that Rabbi FUNNYE was here, but as you mentioned, on Tuesday, he will be with us at the DeSabo Museum at 5:30 because he is the chief rabbi of the diaspora. And so, Chanel, some of your questions when you were talking about the communities, the Jewish communities and the Hebrew communities in Africa, whether that's in Nigeria, whether that's in Ghana, all over the country, the Hebrew connection and the Jewish connection in Jewish communities. Uganda has been a community in Israel who has been fighting, or not fighting for, just working for their recognition in the state of Israel, and has not been recognized by the state of Israel. This is not only a race issue, because it also happens with communities all over the world. And so Rabbi FUNNYE would be wonderful that's been the core of his work for many, many years. And he's very knowledgeable about the Jewish communities in Africa. And so
and I want to thank you for even broaching that topic. The topic around race, because I think it's true, as you stated earlier, that there is a lot in common, that the Jewish community has played a role in a lot of the fights that African Americans have been waging in the fight for equality in this country. But there is also the truth that there are African people who claim Jewish ancestry who have also had to fight against elements there who have pushed against that. And so I think that it's important, especially as we talk about the Ethiopian Jews who were invited in. And then we need to also talk about those who have unfortunately not been, and why that is. And when we think about someone like Netanyahu, who is, I don't know if he's the longest serving prime minister in Israel, but I know that he has been, the longest serving prime minister in Israel, who holds a lot of sway and who rules with a very heavy hand, who has a very nationalistic approach. I don't know if Israelis would view him as the Trump of Israel, but I think that across the world, a lot of people do view him in that way for the policies that he's put in place. And so, it's important to talk about the similarities, but I think it's also important to talk about the parts that might not be as comfortable if we're going to have an honest conversation.
Absolutely. And I think the comparison to Trump is actually very appropriate, because Netanyahu, surprisingly, has been he's a biblical person, both he and his wife, and so he has been a person in his book to even recognize the similarities with the Black and Jewish communities. He's also been someone who has been a supporter of some of the communities of color in Israel, and when Israel has had, issues recently with the Ethiopian community, where they had some issues with police and other things, where Netanyahu, unlike American presidents, has stood up to say that this won't be tolerated in Israel. Now, on the other hand, like Trump, Netanyahu is a master politician, and so he plays to the votes, and just like Trump, in playing to the votes, and yet whether he's actually a racist or whether it's just for political purposes, and is something that I think we'll all is something that will be explored. He knew that there was a group of people, I'm talking about Trump, that were could be his voting base. And I think, and Netanyahu he's the same kind of tactical politician that plays to the voters. And there's definitely a very right-wing, powerful, nationalistic voting base that is Netanyahu's voting base as well.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, it is 4:46 p.m. We'll be wrapping up the conversation this evening shortly, and we want to thank everyone that has joined in so far. Hopefully, we can get Brian back on the show. If not, we would continue, and we'll continue here from here, and then wrap up in a few minutes. Also, want to announce to the general community, the general diaspora community, of the June 24th exchange ceremony, which is coming up. Last year, for those of you who witnessed the coronation of Reverend Jesse Jackson as first king of the African diaspora, well, we're going to be having the second king of the diaspora this year, and it's going to be Congressman Daniel Davis. There are also going to be two queens that are going to be coronated, and they are going to be the first two queens of the diaspora. This is going to be done on June 24th at the Karen Center for the Arts, exactly at 6 p.m. 4 p.m. will be reception. 6 p.m. the show starts. Tickets are currently available on Eventbrite. You can get your tickets. Early bird tickets. General admission is $30. $60 is VIP. And so go ahead and get your tickets now. Invite your friends and let them know that it's time to restore the royalty. And this is what the Progressive Mind show is doing with the exchange ceremony. So remember, June 24th is the main event. Prior to that, which is the Friday before the Saturday, which is June 23rd, we're going to have a historic panel discussion at the Rainbow Push headquarters. We are excited to partner with the Rainbow Push to bring you the panel discussion, which will encompass the history and mental health connection when it comes to the diaspora and continental Africans. How is our history connected as a people? Because it is said that a people without their history is like a tree without its roots. And so it's very important as a people of the diaspora, we learn about our history, who we are, where we're from, who our ancestors were, where they are from, what they did, and how what they did is so relevant in our time today. And so that will be the Friday, June 23rd at Rainbow Push. And then the night before the Thursday is going to be a business forum. And so make sure you save these 3 dates, June 22nd, 23rd, the main one, which will be the exchange ceremony with the diaspora coming together to exchange our culture, and also the coronation of Congressman Daniel Davis. And the queen, that's going to be, the two queens are going to be coronated. And let me try to see. Yes, I remember their names. I didn't forget. It's Dr. Carol Adams and Valerie Daniels Carter. These are the two queens that are going to be coronated. In addition to these three people, we're also going to have 4 nominees that we're going to restore the royalties to. And this is going to be a traditional decoration of these individuals by the king who is coming from Anglo, the Volta region in Ghana. And so watch out for this historic but culturally very rich event, which is themed restoration of the royalty. So make a day with us. Make sure you get your tickets on Eventbrite right now. And you can also invite friends, which we encourage you to do. Invite your friends and colleagues to get tickets so that we together as a people can exchange our cultures and also witness the restoration of royalty. And in November, after this event in June, in November, we're taking a trip to Ghana to see the land that the king has offered African Americans as part of the restoration conversation or restoration project that we are on. And so but that being said, KRISTINA, it's we have about 5 to 8 minutes to wrap up this evening's conversation. What should people expect? I know you talked about why we're meeting at the Dusaba Museum at 5:30. But aside getting to know of the observations of these individuals that are coming, why is it important for people to come?
Well, I've been an advocate of the acknowledging and the restoration of the relationship between the Black and Jewish communities. One of the greatest, the climax of that relationship was the Civil Rights Bill, the passing of the Civil Rights Bill. And so when you have that kind of victory because of the alliance of two people groups, those two people groups were the main alliance. Is really the gold standard of a political alliance between the Black and Jewish community. As I learned about that, I always felt like, this shouldn't be, this should be celebrated and recognized, and it should be, we should make efforts to keep that alliance between the two communities. We know, like in a nation of democracy, when you don't have enough votes yourself, you have to build relationship with other people. It's like what you're doing between the African and African American community. And then as we start to study that and we start to do it, we realize how much misinformation and just misunderstanding between people groups. And we see some things that were done very intentionally, some things that are just, when people have been close and they've worked together, that also gives. It's like in divorce, the person that you loved, now you don't even talk to him anymore, right? So there's sometimes it's disappointment, expectation, misunderstanding. And so to continue the conversation between these two people groups is very important. We also see the Jewish roots of Christianity and the Judeo-Christian values, the value system that these people groups both embrace. And so there's so much to learn from each other. There's so many benefits. And yes, there's also difficult conversations. As Chanel said, you have to also embrace the difficult conversations and some of the disappointments. Otherwise, it's not real. And so when Kyrie Irving and when the Kanye and those conversations have come up for years, I've been wanting to see this big, conversation between the Black and Jewish community. I didn't know it was going to happen like that, but I was happy just to see a recognition of the relationship and for it to be delved into deeply. And I think that that some of the misunderstanding, it's been shocking to me some of the vitriol that's been in the conversation, and sometimes when all the focus is on the negative, because it's actually it has a richness to its history in the same way that the African American and the African have such every reason and every to walk together, and yet with so much miseducation and misunderstanding, we see communities that are apart.
Thank you again, KRISTINA, for a great insight. Chanel.
KRISTINA, thank you. I appreciate just what you added to the conversation, and it makes me want to be more educated just about the Jewish community as I educate myself about African people throughout the diaspora as well. And I just want to say, Cindy, you're doing such amazing work with the ceremony that you're putting on and the work that you're doing, bringing together the African and the African-American community. So kudos to both of you guys. I'm just happy to be a part of everything you guys are doing. I look forward to the event at the DuSable Museum on Tuesday.
Great, thank you so much. These are the conversations that ought to be had in these days. It's the 21st century, and as a people with a common heritage, I think that we can lose sight of our connection, and we do so at our own peril. And so we are humbled to be able to have been on this journey for about 6 years now, and we're hoping that the general community or the bigger community of the diaspora will come to understand that in spite of the challenges and the history and the lost history, actually, and in spite of the challenges that we face today, and how and the cynics, there is still a lot of hope for the Black community to keep forging ahead, because when we become better as a people, the entire society benefits off of it. So we keep working, and we keep praying to God to keep directing us as we work for humanity. That said,
Brian is in the waiting room. He said he's in the waiting room. Can you see him? If you want
we can see him.
Oh, okay, I'll let him know.
Yeah, he might need to go out and come back in. So that said, it's 4 minutes to 5 p.m. and we will wrap the conversation up this evening and get ready for Tuesday. That said, KRISTINA King, I know you're trying to get Brian back. I mean, I know Brian's trying to get back into the studio, but if he comes in, we'll have him give us his last words. If not, KRISTINA, please give us your closing remarks, and also we want to state that actually give us the date, the not the dates, but the address to the DuSable Museum. Actually, looks like we have. But while we get Brian in, KRISTINA just looked up. If you don't have the address, I can read it out. If you don't have it,
I don't have it. So.
We put it on the spot, Center. That's not
everybody.
Google the DuSable Museum. They can Google it. Put it in your Google Maps or whatever.
Yeah, so 5:30 on Tuesday at the DuSable Museum in Hyde Park, 56th Street. I don't know.
Cottage Grove. It's on Cottage Grove.
Well, other things. So it's right near University of Chicago Hospital, and we just want to continue the conversation, the relationship. So many things happening with Israel. So many things happening with the Black and Jewish community. We want to continue to have that discussion.
Okay.
And, so
Brian is here. Unfortunately, the connection wasn't helping at the time. Brian, you're back to the show. If there's anything that you wanted to say prior to you going off, please go ahead and complete that, and then we can have you give us your closing remarks as we.
You're on mute, Brian. You're on mute.
A second. Sorry about that. No, I apologize for that. No, I'm sorry for dropping out. Please proceed.
No, okay, great. So we continued with the issue going on in Israel. You give us a great insight to. You were giving us actually a lot of insight to Netanyahu's governance and what's going on there regarding the protest. But something I was curious about before your line went off. In your lifetime, have you seen this size of demonstration or this intensity in demonstration in Israel? Let me see here. I don't know who. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
My question is that in your lifetime, have you seen this magnitude of demonstration to any government in the history of Israel? I mean, again, in your lifetime, have you seen anything of this sort?
That's exactly the right question. And that was what I was in the middle of, is that no, I mean, there have been protests. Israel's a very active country, shall we say, and there's a very vigorous public sector, but it's never been like this. And so what I was saying is the people who when I say to people, well, Israel's been through so much, and they say this time is truly different. So no, it's never been like this.
Okay, and so what's your expectation? What should people expect on Tuesday at the DuSable Museum, Brian?
Well, I think it's going to be a great discussion like we had here, and a lot of interesting topics, and maybe people learn things they haven't heard before.
Great. That said, join the Shiloh Institute at the DuSable Museum. So we would now we have the address up so you can read it. It's going to be the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center. That is a precise location. Address is 740 East 56th Place, Chicago. We're very close to the University of Chicago Hospital. You can't miss it. Join, come and listen. Come and listen and also interact with Rabbi Kipras FUNNYE, who is the senior rabbi of BETH Shalom Benai ZAKEN Ethiopian congregation here in Chicago. Also in attendance will be the Consul General of Israel to the Midwest, Mr. Yinam Cohen. And in addition to them will be the president and CEO of the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center, Perry Emmer, and of course, KRISTINA King is also going to be there. She is the president and founder of Shiloh Institute. And of course, Brian Abrahams is also going to be there. We will be there. The Progressive Mind Show will be there to lend our support as usual. And we are inviting the community to attend this event to learn and to hear observations from Israel, what is going on there, and as a society, what we can do to support them. At this point, we can pray for them, but hopefully we can learn more about what we can all do and what we need to know about Israel. Tuesday coming at 5:30. Don't miss this great opportunity. I gave KRISTINA, you had your last words. Brian, you can go ahead and give us your last words if I already did that. I don't know. Shina, did I do that already?
I give mine to KRISTINA.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sana, and thank you, Chanel. And I just wanted to thank you as well, Brian. Brian's been an amazing advocate of the Black-Jewish relationship. Too much to mention, but in all of his work, and in I've had the privilege to be able to work with him for many years and to learn so much from his mentoring. And he has truly, in his lifetime, been such an advocate of the relationship between the Black and Jewish community. And so at that program, we hope to continue to find and build advocates of this relationship and to help to never forget the relationship between the Black and Jewish community and the things that it was able to accomplish. There's much more things to be the moral conscience of America right now, and we need people of goodwill and good conscience to come together and be ethical leaders in this world.
Powerful. Not KRISTINA, Chanel.
No, it's been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to the event on Tuesday at the DuSable Museum. Thank you all for joining us and talking with us.
Well, let's come. Can we bring the curtains to tonight's preview to Observations from Israel, coming Tuesday, 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the DuSable Museum. Make a date with us as we learn and hear observations from Israel. Well, this has been the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, and I have been supported and helped with I've been supported and given a lot of help by my co-host Chanel Oliver. We also have learned a lot from Brian Abrahams and KRISTINA King. We're looking forward to learning more on Tuesday at 5:30. For Fasika, thank you for joining us. Constant Ochre and the other folks that joined us, I couldn't give you shout outs. We apologize, but thank you for joining us. Tuesday will be at the DuSable Museum supporting them, and the next week, Sunday at 4 p.m. we'll be here to continue the community building agenda right here on this platform. Once again, we appreciate your time. This has been the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna. We shall see you very soon. Have a wonderful rest of today, which is a beautiful Sunday in Chicago. We shall see you. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.